So fear is a natural and essential part of being human. At its core, fear arises from our instinctive drive for survival. Fear alerts us to potential danger and to potential threats. However, in modern life, fear often extends beyond physical threats, and it includes emotional, psychological, and also existential concerns. The root of fear lies in uncertainty, perceived lack of control, and the potential for loss, whether that loss be safety, love, status, or even a sense of loss of self. So fear impacts us in several ways. It influences our thoughts, it influences our emotions, and it certainly influences our actions. Fear activates the fight or flight response. Fear triggers adrenaline release within our bodies. It increases the heart rate and it heightens our alertness. Chronic fear leads to stress-related health issues such as anxiety, insomnia, and a weakened immune system. So fear fosters feelings of vulnerability and insecurity, and it often leads to avoidance behaviors or even overreactions. Fear could also isolate us emotionally as we tend to withdraw in order to protect ourselves. So fear can also cause us to overanalyze situations. Fear can cause us to procrastinate. And fear can even cause us to make decisions based on avoidance rather than ambition or passion. So navigating fear on a daily basis is something that we need to try and do. The way to do this, the first thing to do in order to navigate fear is to acknowledge and to name the fear. So identifying the specific root of your fear is what diminishes its power. So ask yourself questions like, what am I really afraid of here? Is this fear rational or is this fear exaggerated? Then once you have acknowledged and named the fear, it's important to ground yourself. So practice mindfulness by doing grounding techniques such as deep breathing, meditation, or even focusing on the present moment can help to regulate your nervous system and to prevent fear from spiraling out of control. It's also important that we seek evidence. In other words, evaluate the reality of the situation that you are facing. So are you reacting to a perceived threat rather than an actual one that is taking place? And then it's important to reframe your perspective. So instead of seeing fear as an obstacle, view it as an opportunity for growth, because fear often points us towards areas of life where we can learn, where we can heal, and also where we can expand. And then the next thing that we need to do is to take small steps. So break down overwhelming challenges into small, manageable pieces or actions. Facing fears incrementally builds confidence and will also build your resilience towards it. So let's talk about how to recognize fear and the different ways that it crops up in our lives on a daily basis. So I'm going to take you through some interesting questions. These questions, the answers to these questions may surprise you, as hopefully you will see that it is fear hiding in plain sight in your life. So how often do you keep delaying important tasks or decisions, rationalizing it as waiting for the right time or needing more preparation before you can do that thing? This would stem from your fear of failure, your fear of rejection, or just not meeting your fear of not meeting the expectations of others around you. These fears are often what underpin procrastination. So the thought of not succeeding may subconsciously paralyze our actions. What about how often do you feel compelled to work excessively, often working extra long hours, working evenings, working weekends? Do you do you strive for perfection in your job, in your career? Or are you the kind of person who's always overcommitting yourself at the expense of your own personal well-being? Well, friends, this would be your fear of inadequacy or your fear of being judged as being not good enough. This is often rooted in the fear of disappointing others or the fear of losing the approval of others. It's all fear. How often are you declining social invitations? How often are you avoiding difficult conversations that need to be had? Or how often are you keeping your personal relationships on a fairly superficial level? If you are doing any of these things, this would be your fear of rejection, your fear of vulnerability, or even just being judged, which can and often does lead to isolation or surface level interactions with other people. Are you staying in situations that drain your energy or make you unhappy because changing the situation feels a little bit too daunting? Like sometimes you often hear people talk about, oh, better the devil you know than the devil you don't. Well, if this is you, you may have fear of the unknown. You may have fear of financial insecurity. And oftentimes, loneliness keeps people stuck in unhealthy patterns. Even when they know that a change is needed, sometimes we just feel safe in that familiar, in that secure, but actually it's unhealthy. We shouldn't be there. But it's the fear of the unknown that keeps us in that moment. Here's a big one. Do you consistently prioritize other people's needs over your own? Often to your own detriment, I'm sure. So this would be a fear of conflict. This would be a fear of disapproval. And this would also be a fear of being perceived as being selfish, which often drives these people-pleasing behaviors. Again, not okay. Not okay. Do you frequently judge yourself harshly? Do you often focus on your perceived flaws? Or do you dismiss your own accomplishments as being nothing special? If you do, then you may have a fear of being unworthy, a fear of being inadequate, which often fosters this inner critic. And this inner critic limits your self esteem and limits your personal growth as well. Do you often struggle to make choices, even small ones? Do you find yourself overanalyzing every possible outcome while never actually making the decision that needs to be made? If you do, you may be suffering from a fear of making the wrong decision, or you have a fear that you may regret the decision, so you'd rather not make it. Safer to not make it than actually fear what happens after that. Do you maybe also meticulously plan every detail of your day, every detail of your future, leaving little to no room for spontaneity? If that is you, you have a fear of uncertainty. You also may have a fear of loss of control. And all of this could be driving an excessive need for predictability and order in your life. Do you impulsively buy items to treat yourself? Or do you hoard things that you don't use just in case you might need it on another day? You may be dealing with a fear of scarcity or a fear of lack, which often manifests as compulsive consumption or holding on to things for perceived security. Have you ever declined opportunities for growth, such as learning a new skill, applying for a promotion, or traveling to an unfamiliar place? This might be a fear of failure again. So you're afraid to step out of your comfort zone, or you're afraid that you're not good enough. So the fear of you not being good enough limits your potential and you don't try to progress forward. What about constantly worrying about your loved ones? Are you constantly worried about them? Are you constantly worried about their choices that they make? Are you constantly worried about your loved one's safety? And do you often attempt to control their actions for their own benefit, for their own good, for their own safety, for their own whatevers? This would be your fear of losing loved ones or feeling powerless in their lives. And this will often manifest as over involvement or possibly even micromanaging others. How often do small inconveniences or small criticisms, how often do they trigger disproportionate anger or distress in your life? You may have a fear of being disrespected. You may have a fear of being unworthy, or you may even have a fear of being out of control, all of which underpins this exaggerated emotional response within you. And what about how often do you convince yourself that you're okay with mediocrity in your relationships, in your career, and even in your own personal growth? How often are you settling for this mediocre life? This is a fear of failing at something greater. This is a fear of rejection. And this is also a fear of stepping into your true potential. And all of these fears are keeping you from striving for more. So as you can see, fear absolutely controls and rules our lives more than we realize. And by learning to identify our own behaviors as being fear-based, you can actually start to begin addressing the underlying causes and learn how to reclaim areas of your life where fear has unknowingly taken hold of you. So one of the most common elements of all the previous scenarios that I've just taken you through is this whole thing of uncertainty. So why does uncertainty trigger anxiety within us so easily? So uncertainty creates a sense of vulnerability because it exposes us to the unknown. And by removing our ability to predict or removing our ability to control outcomes, this is where the fear of uncertainty comes in. We must understand that the human brain is wired to seek patterns, and it's also wired to seek predictability, because when we see the patterns and when we predict outcomes, it gives us a false sense of security, and it makes us feel as if we can survive, that we can cope, that we will be okay. And when these things are absent, anxiety emerges as a psychological response to fill the gap. Uncertainty often symbolizes a lack of safety, a lack of stability, and all of this leads to feelings of insecurity. Anxiety also causes us to catastrophize. It causes us to imagine worst case scenarios in response to uncertainty. And not knowing what to expect from a situation can and often does make us feel powerless, which again exacerbates the feelings of fear. So, the best way to cope with uncertainty is to focus on that which you can control. So, redirect your energy to aspects of life that are within your influence, such as your mindset, your choices, and your reactions. Build yourself a resilient mindset by cultivating adaptability, by viewing uncertainty as inevitable and often transformative part of your life. So if you embrace it, if you accept it, if you allow it, if you cultivate that sense of adaptability, you won't be so afraid of uncertainty. And then it's also important to develop faith and trust. So, whether through spiritual beliefs or whether through confidence in your own abilities, trusting that challenges can be navigated fosters a sense of inner peace within you. Okay, so one of the things we also have to understand, so understanding fear, understanding how fear manifests in our lives, how it's hidden in our lives, all of these kind of things is one thing. But understanding the role of psychological and emotional conditioning in our lives is also important in order to get a handle on the fear that is controlling us at the moment. So you need to know that our responses to fear and our responses to uncertainty are deeply influenced by our psychological and our emotional conditioning. From early childhood, I mean, from the instant you are born, we are all learning patterns of thinking, we're learning patterns of feeling, we're learning behaviors based on our environment, based on our experiences, and based on our societal norms. So we all have learned fear responses because many of our fears are inherited from our past experiences or our modeled behaviors, such as overprotective parents or traumatic events that you've experienced. All of these create learned fear responses. We also need to understand our emotional triggers because our subconscious conditioning creates automatic reactions to certain stimuli, even when the original cause is actually no longer even present. Then we have cultural narratives. So society often amplifies fear through messages of scarcity, competition, or unattainable perfection. And we see this in all our social media, our TV, our programs, our movies, all of those kind of things as well. So how do we overcome this conditioning that we're all, affected by? The first thing is to recognize the influence of past conditioning. And when you recognize the influence of past conditioning, it allows you to challenge your automatic responses and to replace them with conscious choices. You can do inner work practices like therapy, journaling, and doing maybe some shadow work, even, which can help you to uncover and to reframe the limiting beliefs and patterns that you are living your life by. It's also important that you shift your self talk, because often your self talk is what triggers your fear responses. So shift your self talk and embrace perspectives that align with empowerment and possibility. And then by understanding the root of your fear, understanding its interplay with uncertainty and your personal conditioning, understanding all of this, you can navigate life with greater awareness, with greater confidence, where every moment of fear becomes an invitation to grow, an invitation to transform, and an invitation to rediscover your own inner strength. So what I want to do now is I want to give you a couple of journal prompts that you can work through. So I'm going to give you 5 journal prompts. You can do all 5, absolutely, but I want you to, when I take you through them, to listen to one, or listen for one, I should say, not to one. Listen for one that sort of stands out, one that sort of, jumps out at you as, oh, yes, that one feels a bit uncomfortable, or that one sounds interesting, or I don't like that one. So it's the one you have the biggest reaction to. Let that be the first journal prompt that you work with. And basically, what I want you to do is I want you to get out your journal, get out pen and paper. It has to be pen and paper, please. No typing on a cell phone, no typing on a computer. Pen and paper always works best with journaling, okay? And I want you to basically go through this question for yourself. Remember, no one's going to read this, nobody's going to see it. So you can really and truly unpack the emotions and the situations that you might be going through. All right. Journal prompt. First journal prompt. Prompt number 1. What is something that you've been avoiding in your life? And what do you fear might happen if you actually face it? So for this journal prompt, reflect on areas in your life where you feel stuck. Reflect on areas in your life where you feel hesitant, and maybe explore the potential fears that are holding you back from doing these things. Okay, next one. I want you to think of a recent situation where you felt anxious or completely and utterly overwhelmed. What thoughts or beliefs fueled those feelings? And write about that. So analyze your thought patterns to uncover the fear-based triggers and their roots within that situation. And what is the worst case scenario that you can imagine when you think about your biggest fear? How realistic is that scenario? And how would you handle it if it actually came true? And I want you here with this one, I want you to challenge your fear by exploring its rationality and brainstorming solutions around it. What early experiences or messages have shaped your relationships with fear, and how do they still influence you today? So here it's important that you dive into your past to identify the origins of your fear and how the conditioning, how it has conditioned your current responses. And the last journal prompt. What would your life look like if you let go of these fears? What steps can you take to start moving toward that vision today? And with this one, I want you to focus on envisioning a life for yourself, a life without constraints of fear, a life that allows you to set actionable goals and allows you to achieve them. So, what would your life look like if you were able to let go of fear? So, friends, there's a lot of work for you to unpack in this soul service. Take your time, work through it, come back to this as often as you need. But what I hope you could do going forward from here is to look at your life on a daily basis and to recognize when fear is driving your reactions, driving your responses, and driving the way that you are navigating situations. Because if you can change that, if you can change your reactions and responses, suddenly your challenges become so easy, so simple. They become fewer and further between. And actually, you start moving yourself towards a more fulfilled, more happy, and an easier life. And that's what we all need. That's what we all want. And that's what we all deserve. So I hope overcoming your fears, acknowledging, identifying, acknowledging, and overcoming becomes easier for you when you recognize how it is triggering in your life. Sending you all much love and many blessings.